Why does Mark Zuckerberg wear the same t-shirt every day? Well, maybe he does it because he's copying Steve Jobs. But why did Steve Jobs do it? Well, supposedly it's to reduce decision fatigue. And spoiler for later in the video, until pretty recently, researchers assumed that any sort of mental effort, whether that was making decisions, resisting temptation, or avoiding distractions, depleted a sort of central store of willpower that we use for absolutely everything. But what if I told you that wasn't the full story? And in fact, what if I said that just understanding the science behind willpower could actually unlock new reserves of it and help you to get loads more done? That is what we're going to talk about in this video, inspired by The Expectation Effect, a book by David Robson that I cannot recommend enough. You should definitely go read it, but if you want the willpower to get through it instead of just checking Twitter or something, you should watch this video first, because by the end you're going to understand how to harness basically unlimited willpower with some very small tweaks to the way you think. And if you still want to wear the same t-shirt every day afterwards, that's fine too. That is a strong look. So it was actually Sigmund Freud that first popularized the idea that we need willpower to do things, with the impulsive id and the pragmatic superego constantly fighting over what actions we should take. But it was a psychologist called Roy Baumeister who decided to test that theory systematically with a series of experiments that shaped much of our thinking about willpower for years afterwards. In one experiment, for instance, volunteers were left in a room with two bowls in front of them, one full of radishes and the other full of cookies. Some were told to eat the radishes and some were allowed to take 2 or 3 cookies. After they finished, they were given a complex task to work on that was actually secretly impossible to solve, and told to ring a little bell when they got sick of working on it. And the findings kind of backed up Baumeister's hypothesis. The radish group averaged 8.5 minutes on the problem before giving up, whereas the cookie group more than doubled that at 19. And other experiments backed up this finding in different fields of mental effort. So when people were asked to watch Robin Williams routines without laughing, they were less able to focus on solving anagrams afterwards, and when they were told to ignore pop-ups on a screen they were working on, they were less competent at tasks involving logic and reading comprehension afterwards. In every experiment, practicing self-discipline in one sphere, whether that meant avoiding temptation, ignoring distraction, or just keeping your emotions in check, led to worse self-discipline in others. And maybe most striking was that the tasks being given to the subjects weren't actually that difficult in the grand scheme of things, suggesting that even small daily decisions can deplete willpower overall. As for what was causing this effect, Baumeister and his colleagues decided that it was probably a lack of glucose in the brain, backed up by studies that showed an increase in glucose metabolism in the frontal regions of the brain during difficult tasks, as well as his own studies which seemed to show that low blood sugar can correlate with lower willpower. And this all sounded bad, but Baumeister suggested loads of things to mitigate the effects, including working out willpower like a muscle and cutting down on small daily decisions that could sap willpower. Hence the t-shirts thing. But Baumeister's research was missing something crucial: the power of expectations. You probably know people who seem to have endless energy. At the end of a hard day, some people just go and play video games, and some people go home, start grinding on a side hustle, they learn the piano, or they read a book for 3 hours straight. Personally, I cannot wait to go to the gym in the morning, but I know other people for whom it feels like a real mental effort and they find it very draining. But this partly relates to what we already believe about the difficulty of the tasks. So, for instance, Dutch researchers have shown that just being told we find an exercise energizing rather than fatiguing can reduce the sense of depletion. So if you've got it in your mind that the gym or reading or piano practice is tiring, then it probably will be. But what's even more powerful are our expectations about our capabilities in general, which can actually affect our brain chemistry in really surprising ways. So a researcher called Veronika Job at the University of Vienna asked test subjects whether they agreed with statements like, "After a strenuous mental activity, your energy is depleted and you must rest to get it refueled again," as opposed to, "Sometimes working on a strenuous mental task can make you feel energized for further challenging activities." So this let researchers split people into 2 groups, those with limited and those with non-limited views of the mind's resources. And when the volunteers did the same sort of willpower depleting tests as Baumeister's test subjects, the researchers found something surprising. Those with a non-limited view of their own willpower were able to concentrate for far longer. As Robson puts it in the book, this seems to show that the consequences of ego depletion are real, but only if you believe in it. So to test this idea, Job gave a fresh set of volunteers a series of tasks to do, but the twist this time was she exposed them to one set of beliefs, either the limiting or the non-limiting ones. And the effect was stunning. Just by exposing them to the idea that willpower isn't a finite resource, she actually dramatically increased their willpower. And the most amazing part is, this finding wasn't restricted to one study. It's since been replicated in much larger and longer term studies, with some research showing that people with a non-limited view of the mind are actually more productive compared to their own average after a demanding day. So in other words, if you've had a hard day at work, you're actually more capable of practicing piano, reading, whatever else, than if your day was quite easy. And to really unlock the power of this finding, it helps to understand how it dovetails with Baumeister's own research about the brain. Because he was probably right about the way glucose has an effect on willpower, with one explanation for the difference being that if you have a limited view of your own resources, your brain kind of parcels out glucose very slowly, in the same way that you try not to spend too much money when you're close to payday at the end of the month. And if you are really glucose depleted, it does make it harder to focus on tasks. And this is borne out by physical effects. Studies have shown that swilling a glucose-rich drink around your mouth and then spitting it out without ingesting any of it can actually improve your willpower, as can the smell of coffee, as long as your brain associates it with productivity. This might explain why willpower appears to improve with practice. It helps to just believe that you're expanding your willpower. And it probably is actually helping Mark Zuckerberg. He believes it leaves him with more willpower, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So here's the really good news. If you've watched this far in the video, you already know that your brain has a ton of glucose in reserve and can dish it out basically whenever you need it. You know that small daily tasks don't sap your willpower, and that a demanding day at work can actually make you more productive. So just watching this video should have given you a little bit more willpower. But if you want to benefit more broadly from the effect, next time you're tempted to spend the evening browsing Netflix or playing video games, push yourself into doing something more creative instead, and see if it leaves you more energized than you were expecting. Remind yourself of times that you found mental effort invigorating. That will help your brain change its conception of how much willpower it has. Just remember one thing. If you push yourself too far too fast, you can actually come away with a negative view of your own capabilities, and that can be self-reinforcing too. So ideally, you want to push yourself just outside your comfort zone every time you practice, and to do that, I would suggest watching this video. Thank you very much for watching.